The leather was still warm from the California sun when I pulled into the driveway. $135,000 worth of electric Porsche Taycan, painted midnight blue with chrome accents that caught the light like a blade. The engine didn't roar. It hummed, smooth and lethal, like money that doesn't need to announce itself.
But they heard it anyway.
Heads turned. Mrs. Pemberton from number 12, the same woman who'd once told my mother I'd wasted my potential, nearly dropped her gardening shears. Mr. Hartford, who'd laughed when I said I wanted to be an architect instead of a lawyer, stood frozen on his porch, coffee mug halfway to his lips. Even the kids playing basketball down the street stopped mid-game. I'd left Fairview in a rusted sedan with 2 suitcases and a dream everyone called foolish. Now I was back in a car that cost more than most of their yearly salaries. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the satisfaction. My parents' mansion loomed ahead. White columns, manicured hedges, the kind of house that screamed old money and older values. The Pierce estate. The family legacy I was supposed to worship but never inherit. I cut the engine. Silence fell like a curtain. Then the front door opened. My mother appeared first, Marjorie Pierce in her signature pearls and ice-cold composure. Her eyes swept over the Porsche, then me, calculating the cost of both. Behind her came my father, Leonard Pierce, looking smaller than I remembered. Frielier. The man who'd once filled every room with his voice now moved like he was made of glass. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. He stopped at the top of the steps, studying me with those sharp attorney eyes that had cross-examined my every life choice. 3 years since I'd seen him. 3 years since the letter that cut me out of the family tree like a diseased branch. You've done well for yourself, he said. His tone was flat, but I caught something underneath. Surprise? Resentment? Pride he'd never admit to? I stepped out of the car, straightened my jacket.
Custom-tailored.
Italian. The kind of detail my father always noticed. I did, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. Without a dime of your legacy. My mother's face went pale. Actually pale. Marjorie Pierce, the woman who'd perfected the art of looking unbothered, looked bothered. The neighborhood was watching. I could feel their eyes like heat on my back. The same people who'd watched me leave in shame were now watching me return in glory. In Fairview, that was currency. We should talk inside, my mother said quietly, glancing at the Pembertons' window. Should we? I asked. Last time I tried to talk, you returned my wedding invitation unopened. The words hung in the air like smoke. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's hand went to her pearls, that nervous habit she thought nobody noticed. Your brother said you'd come, my father continued, ignoring my comment entirely. Classic Leonard Pierce. Deflect, redirect, never apologize. He said you'd want to see me before. He paused, and for the first time I saw it. The weakness. The mortality he'd spent his whole life outrunning. Before what? I pressed. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back inside, each step slower than the last. My mother lingered at the door. Things are different now, Rowan. Her voice cracked, just slightly. He's different. Is he? I asked. Or is he just running out of time to pretend he was right about me? She flinched. Actually flinched. Then she followed my father inside, leaving the door open behind her. An invitation. Or a trap. With my parents, it was always hard to tell the difference. I looked back at my Porsche, gleaming in the afternoon sun like a trophy. Every scratch I'd earned. Every mile I'd driven. Every dollar I'd made while they counted me out. The house suddenly felt like a mouth, waiting to swallow me whole. I took a breath and walked toward it anyway, because sometimes you have to face the people who broke you to prove they didn't destroy you. But as I crossed the threshold into that familiar, suffocating house, one thought echoed in my mind. What exactly did my brother mean by before? The house smelled exactly the same. Leather furniture polish and my mother's lavender perfume mixed with something darker. Old money and older secrets. Every surface gleamed. Every painting hung perfectly straight. The Pierce mansion wasn't a home. It was a museum dedicated to appearances. I found them in the study, my father's kingdom. Dark wood panels, law books lining the walls like soldiers, that massive desk where he'd signed away people's futures with a fountain pen. He sat in his leather chair, smaller than I remembered, while my mother stood by the window, her back rigid as a sword. "Sit," my father said. Not an invitation. A command. I remained standing. I didn't come here to follow orders. His eyes flashed with something, anger, maybe respect, but his body betrayed him. He reached for a glass of water, with a trembling hand. The great Leonard Pierce, shaking like a leaf. "You've made your point with that car," he said. "Very impressive. Now we can discuss." "Discuss what?" I cut him off. "How you told me I'd never amount to anything. How you said architecture was a hobby for people who couldn't handle real business." My mother turned from the window.
Rowan, please.
"Your father is dying?" I finished. The word hung between us like a grenade with the pin pulled. "Is that why I'm here? Deathbed reconciliation? Too little, too late?" "Watch your tone," my father snapped, but there was no force behind it. Just an old recording playing on worn-out speakers. I laughed. Actually laughed. "You cut me out of your life because I chose love over money. Because Isla's father was a mechanic and not a judge. Because I wanted to build things instead of own things. And now you want me to what? Pretend that didn't happen?" "We wanted what was best for you," my mother whispered. "No," I said. "You wanted what looked best for you." The silence that followed could have suffocated us all. Then my father spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you remember when you were 7?
I wasn't expecting that.
"What?" "You built a tree house in the backyard.
Spent weeks on it.
Drew up plans, measured everything twice. It was crooked and the door didn't close right, but you were so proud." He paused, something flickering across his face. "I told you it wasn't good enough. Made you tear it down." The memory hit me like a fist. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I'd buried it with all the others. "I thought I was teaching you excellence," he continued. "Instead, I taught you that nothing you did would ever be good enough." His hand trembled worse now. I was wrong. Those 3 words. I was wrong. From Leonard Pierce's mouth, they sounded like a foreign language. But I wasn't 7 anymore. And sorry doesn't rebuild what was destroyed. "Victor will be here soon," my mother said, desperate to fill the silence. "And Ilara. We could have dinner. As a family." "We're not a family," I said quietly. "We're strangers who share a last name." My father's face hardened. There it was, the man I knew, the one who couldn't stay vulnerable for more than 5 minutes. "Then why did you come?" Good question. Why had I come? To show off? To prove something? To watch him suffer?
No.
I came because despite everything, some stupid part of me hoped he'd finally see me. "I came," I said slowly, "because I wanted you to know that you were wrong about me. Not just about the architecture. About everything. You said I'd fail without your money, your name, your approval." I stepped closer to his desk. "I didn't just survive. I thrived. My company's worth more than this entire estate. I built that.
Me.
The son you called a waste of potential." My father stared at me, and for a moment, I saw something crack in his expression. Pride? Regret? Pain? Then the study door burst open. Victor stood there, perfectly tailored suit, slicked back hair. That same smug smile he'd worn since we were kids. Well, he said, eyes landing on me. "The prodigal son returns. Nice car, by the way. Compensating for something." And just like that, I was reminded why I left. But Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. And when he looked at our father, I saw something else. Something calculating. What was he planning? Victor moved through the room like he owned it. Because in his mind, he already did. He poured himself a scotch from the crystal decanter, took a slow sip, and studied me like I was a case file he needed to crack. "So you actually came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would. You said Dad was dying." I glanced at our father, who suddenly looked very interested in the papers on his desk. "Was that a lie?" "Not a lie," Victor said smoothly. More like a strategic exaggeration. Dad's sick, sure. But he's not checking out tomorrow. He raised his glass. I just knew it was the only thing that would get you here. My hands clenched into fists. You manipulated me. I got results. Victor shrugged. It's what I do. This was the brother I remembered. The one who turned everything into a game, who saw people as chess pieces, who learned cruelty at our father's knee and perfected it. Victor, my mother warned, but she didn't have the energy to stop him. She never did. What? Victor spread his hands innocently. I'm just saying, Rowan shows up in his fancy car, acting like he's better than us now. But we all know the truth, don't we? He leaned against the desk. You ran away. You abandoned this family. And now you want credit for making it on your own?
Please.
You've always been dramatic. I left because staying would have destroyed me, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Or maybe, Victor countered, you left because you couldn't handle the pressure. Because when Dad pushed, you broke. Some of us are built for this life, little brother. Some of us aren't. The worst part? Years ago, those words would have gutted me. I would have believed them. But now, standing in that study with my 8-figure company and my hard-earned success, they just bounced off like rain on glass. You done? I asked. Victor blinked. He'd expected a fight. Expected me to defend myself, to argue, to prove my worth. That's what the old Rowan would have done. I didn't come here for your approval, I continued. Not yours, not theirs. I came because despite everything, I'm not built like you, Victor. I don't abandon people when they're dying, even if they abandon me first. I looked at my father. But I'm not staying. I've got a life in Crestvale. A wife. A company. Things that actually matter. A wife, my mother repeated softly, like she'd just remembered. Isla, was it? The way she said the name, careful, distant, made my blood boil.
Yes. Isla.
The woman you refused to meet. The wedding you refused to attend. I turned to face her fully. Do you even remember what you said when I called to tell you I was engaged? My mother's face went pale. She remembered. You asked who she was. I told you. Then you asked about her family, her money, her connections. And when I said she didn't have any, you went silent. Dead silent. Like I just told you I was marrying a ghost. We were concerned, she said weakly. You were embarrassed. My voice rose despite myself. You were embarrassed that your son chose love over a portfolio. That I wasn't marrying someone from the country club, someone whose name you could drop at dinner parties. That's not fair, she whispered. Fair. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You want to talk about fair? Victor's engagement party had a live orchestra. Alara's bridal shower made the society pages. And me? You couldn't even RSVP to my wedding. The room went deadly quiet. Even Victor had nothing to say. My father finally spoke. We made choices we thought were right at the time.
No, I said.
You made choices that protected your reputation. There's a difference. I headed for the door. I'd said what I came to say. There was nothing left here but ghosts and regrets. Where are you going? My mother asked. Back to my life. The one I built without you. Rowan, wait. But I was already out the door, my footsteps echoing through the empty hallway. The same hallway where I'd walked as a kid, trying so hard to be good enough, to be seen, to matter. I made it to the foyer when I heard it. My father's voice, weak but clear, carrying from the study. Let him go, Marjorie. We lost him years ago. I should have kept walking. Should have climbed into my Porsche and never looked back. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the defeat in his voice. Maybe it was the part of me that still remembered being 7 years old, building a crooked treehouse, hoping for just one word of praise. I stood there, frozen between leaving and staying, between the man I'd become and the boy I used to be. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Isla. How's it going? Do you need an escape plan? I smiled despite everything. She always knew. I was typing a response when I heard footsteps behind me.
Slow.
Deliberate. I turned. Victor stood at the end of the hallway, backlit by the study light, his expression unreadable. "There's something you should know," he said quietly, "about Dad's will." And everything changed. Crestvale smelled like salt water and possibility. That's what I'd thought the first time I arrived, broke and desperate, with nothing but a drafting pencil and a half-finished degree. The city sprawled along the coast, a living thing of glass buildings and old brick, where tech startups lived next to family restaurants that had been there for generations. It was nothing like Fairview. Thank God. I'd found a studio apartment above a coffee shop. The floors creaked, the windows didn't close all the way, and the shower only worked if you kicked the pipe first. But it was mine. Nobody told me what to think there, who to be, what to want. I spent my days taking whatever work I could find, redesigning the layout of a struggling bookstore, drafting plans for a restaurant expansion, sketching ideas for a local developer who paid in cash and asked no questions. At night, I'd sit at my second-hand desk, surrounded by coffee cups and crumpled paper, and dream bigger than my bank account allowed. That's where I was the night I met her. The coffee shop below my apartment stayed open late, and the owner, Marcus, a former engineer who'd escaped corporate life to pour lattes, didn't mind if I worked at the corner table for hours. I was hunched over a blueprint, trying to figure out how to maximize space in a narrow lot, when someone slid into the seat across from me. "You've been staring at that same corner for 20 minutes, she said. "Either you're stuck, or that's the most fascinating corner in architectural history." I looked up. She had dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, paint-stained jeans, and the kind of smile that made you forget whatever you were worried about. Her eyes were sharp, curious, unimpressed by anything except honesty. "Stuck," I admitted. "I'm trying to fit a load-bearing wall here without ruining the flow of the space, but the math isn't matching." She laughed. Actually laughed. "The math isn't matching. That's very technical." "I'm very technical," I said, and she laughed again. Her name was Isla. She was a muralist, the kind of artist who turned blank walls into stories, who saw beauty where other people saw decay. She'd grown up in Crestvale, the daughter of a mechanic and a nurse, the kind of family that worked for everything and apologized for nothing. We talked for 3 hours that night. About art and buildings, about dreams too big for our wallets, about what it meant to create something lasting in a world that kept tearing things down. When Marcus finally kicked us out so he could close up, we stood on the sidewalk, neither of us wanting to leave. "You should move that wall 6 inches to the left," she said, pointing at my rolled-up blueprint. "It'll give you the support you need without blocking the sight line." I stared at her. "How did you?" "My dad's a mechanic. I grew up understanding how things fit together." She shrugged. "Buildings aren't that different from engines. They both need room to breathe." She was right. Of course she was right. "Can I buy you coffee?" I asked. "Tomorrow?" "As payment for the architectural advice." "You can buy me breakfast," she countered. "I don't do coffee dates. Too short." And that was it. That was the moment my life split into before and after. We became inseparable. She'd show up at job sites with sandwiches and terrible jokes. I'd sit in her studio while she painted murals, watching her turn blank concrete into something alive. We'd walk along the beach at sunset, making plans neither of us could afford yet, believing anyway. 6 months in, I knew. The kind of knowing that doesn't need proof or time. The kind that just is. A year later, I proposed. Not in a restaurant with a hidden photographer. Not with a flash mob or a billboard. I proposed on the same beach where we'd walked dozens of times, at sunrise, when the world was still quiet and the light turned everything gold. "I don't have much," I told her, the ring, simple, modest, all I could afford, shaking in my hand. "I can't promise you mansions or money or anything my family would consider worth having. But I can promise you this. I will build a life with you. Not for you, with you. Every blueprint, every dream, every hard day. Together."
She cried.
I cried. The waves kept crashing, indifferent to our happiness, and it was perfect. Then I made the call I'd been dreading. My mother answered on the 3rd ring. "Rowan." "Hi, Mom. I have news." I took a breath. "I'm engaged." Silence. Long enough to hurt. Who is she? My mother's voice was careful, controlled. Her name is Isla. She's an artist. A muralist. Her family, there it was. The question that mattered more than love, more than happiness, more than anything real. They're good people, I said. Her dad's a mechanic. Her mom's a nurse. They work hard, they love their daughter, and they welcomed me like family. More silence. Then my father's voice cut through, sharp and cold. He'd picked up the other line. Of course he had. Rowan, you're marrying beneath you. You'll regret it. 7 words. That's all it took to shatter the moment. Beneath me? I repeated, my voice hollow. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's a distraction, my father said. You're throwing away your future for a girl with no connections, no prospects, no money, I finished. That's what you mean, isn't it? Don't be naive, he snapped. Marriage is a partnership. You need someone who can elevate you, not drag you down. Something inside me broke clean in half. Isla doesn't drag me down, I said quietly. She lifts me up.
She believes in me.
She sees me, and that's more than you've ever done. I hung up. Isla found me on the beach an hour later, sitting in the sand, the ring box still in my pocket. She didn't ask what happened. She just sat next to me, her shoulder against mine, solid and real. They're not coming to the wedding, are they? She said softly. No, I whispered. They're not. She took my hand. Then we'll fill those seats with people who actually love us. And we did. But 2 weeks after our wedding, the letter arrived. I saw my father's handwriting on the envelope and almost threw it away unopened.
But Isla stopped me. Read it, she said.
Whatever it says, we'll face it together. I opened it. The words were typed, formal, cold as a legal document. You chose your path. Do not expect a dime of our estate. Consider yourself independent. Independent. Like it was a punishment instead of freedom. Isla read over my shoulder, then looked at me with those steady eyes. Good, she said. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Now you don't owe them anything. No guilt, no obligation, no strings. She smiled, fierce and certain. Now you're really free. She was right. But freedom, I was learning, comes with a cost. What I didn't know then was that the cost would be worth it. The wedding invitation came back 3 weeks before the ceremony. The envelope was pristine, unopened, with return to sender scrawled across the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. Probably my mother's assistant. Even rejection was outsourced in the Pierce family. I stood in our tiny apartment, holding the returned invitation like evidence of a crime. Isla was at work, painting a mural downtown. I was alone with the sharp, clean cut of it. They weren't coming. I'd known it, of course. They hadn't RSVP'd, hadn't called, hadn't acknowledged the invitation at all. But part of me, that stupid, stubborn, 7-year-old part, had hoped they'd surprise me. Show up at the last minute with apologies and open arms. I was an idiot. I threw the invitation in the trash, then pulled it back out, then threw it away again. Finally, I left it on the counter and went for a walk. Crestvale was alive that afternoon. Street musicians on corners, tourists taking photos of the bay, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery on 3rd Street. I walked without direction, letting the city swallow me whole. My phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Mom's pretty upset. You really hurt her. I almost laughed. I hurt her? I typed back. She returned my wedding invitation. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. Classic Victor. Another text came through, this time from Alara, my younger sister. We'd barely spoken since I left Fairview. She was the golden child, the one who followed every rule and reaped every reward. I'm sorry about Mom and Dad, she wrote. But you have to understand they're traditional. They just want what's best for you.
What's best for me?
The phrase every controlling parent hides behind.
I didn't respond.
The weeks leading up to the wedding were strange. Happy and heartbreaking all at once. Isla's family embraced me completely. Her father, Tom, took me out for beers and told embarrassing stories about Isla's childhood. Her mother, Linda, cried happy tears and kept asking if I needed anything, constantly worried I wasn't eating enough. Her younger brother, Jake, appointed himself my best man without asking and took the job seriously, planning a bachelor party that involved go-karts and terrible karaoke. They filled the space my family left empty, but the empty space still echoed. 2 days before the wedding, I called my parents one last time. It was late, and I'd maybe had too much wine, but I needed to try. One more time. My mother answered. Rowan. Hi, Mom.
My voice sounded small even to me.
The wedding's in 2 days. I wanted to check if maybe you'd changed your mind. Silence. Then, Rowan, sweetheart, you know how your father feels about this. How he feels, I repeated. What about how you feel? It's complicated.
It's not, I said.
It's actually really simple. Do you want to see your son get married or not? More silence. When she spoke again, her voice was strained. I can't go against your father. You know that. We're a united front. A united front. They'd always been that. Against me. Okay, I said quietly. Okay. I just needed to know. I paused. I love you, Mom. I wish that was enough. I hung up before she could respond. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, soft breeze, the kind of day that felt designed for new beginnings. We'd rented a small venue on the beach, nothing fancy, just a wooden arch decorated with wildflowers and rows of white chairs facing the ocean. I stood at that arch, watching guests arrive. Isla's family, our friends from Crestvale, colleagues I'd worked with, Marcus from the coffee shop, even some of my former professors. People who actually knew us, who cared about us. But 2 chairs in the front row stayed empty. The ones I'd saved just in case. My best man, Jake, noticed me staring at them. You okay? Yeah. I lied. They're idiots, he said simply. Your parents.
Complete idiots.
Anyone who can't see what you and Isla have doesn't deserve to witness it. He was 17, and somehow wiser than my entire family combined. Then the music started. Everyone stood, and Isla appeared. She wore a simple dress, nothing extravagant, her hair loose and wild from the ocean breeze. She carried wildflowers instead of roses. She was barefoot. She was perfect. And when she walked toward me, smiling with tears in her eyes, everything else disappeared. The empty chairs, the rejection, the years of never being enough, all of it just gone. She reached me and took my hands. Hi, she whispered. Hi, I whispered back. The ceremony was short, personal, real. We wrote our own vows. Mine were messy and probably too long, but they were true. Hers made everyone cry, including me. When the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," the beach erupted in cheers. That night, at the reception, Tom gave a speech that had everyone laughing and crying. Linda kept hugging us both and saying, "Welcome to the family." Friends shared stories.
We danced badly.
We ate cake. We were happy. And for a few hours, I forgot about the people who weren't there. But at the end of the night, when Isla and I were alone in our hotel room, she found me standing at the window, staring at nothing. "Talk to me," she said softly. "They really didn't come," I said. I kept thinking maybe they'd show up anyway, surprise us. But they really just didn't. Isla wrapped her arms around me from behind, her chin on my shoulder. Their loss. I know. I turned to face her. How do you let go of people who never held on in the first place? She thought about it. I don't know if you let go. Maybe you just start holding on to better things. She was right. She was always right. 2 weeks later, the letter arrived. My father's final word on the matter. Cold, formal, legally binding. Consider yourself independent. I should have been angry. Should have been hurt. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Relief. They'd cut the rope. Now I could finally fly. But what I didn't know then was that flying meant building wings first. And that would take longer than I thought. What I also didn't know was that one day, years later, I'd return to Fairview. Not as the rejected son, but as someone they could no longer ignore. The smell of salt and sawdust filled the air the morning Margot Lane walked into my life. I was at a construction site, sketching modifications to a beach house renovation I'd been hired to oversee. Small project, smaller budget, but it was mine. She appeared in designer heels and a blazer that cost more than my rent, completely out of place among the lumber and concrete dust. But she walked through that site like she owned it, confident, assessing, missing nothing. "You're Rowan Pierce," she said. Not a question. A statement. That's me. I rolled up my blueprint. "Can I help you? I saw your work on the Morrison project downtown. The bookstore conversion." She pulled out her phone, showed me photos of my design. "You turned a dying retail space into something people actually want to visit. That's rare." "Thank you," I said carefully. "But I don't think you came here just to compliment me." She smiled. Sharp. "All business. I'm developing a residential community along the coast. 15 custom homes, eco-friendly, modern but warm. I need an architect who understands that houses should feel like homes, not showpieces." She looked me dead in the eye. "I think that's you." My heart stopped. That's a multi-million-dollar project. 8 million, actually. And I've looked at 12 architects in 3 cities. None of them got it. They drew mansions. I need someone who builds dreams. She extended her hand. "I'm Margot Lane, and I'd like to make you an offer." We met for coffee the next day. Then dinner. Then a month of negotiations, sketches, revisions, late nights arguing over floor plans and foundation depths. Margot was brilliant, demanding, impossible to impress. She pushed me harder than anyone ever had. "Why do you care so much?" I asked one night, both of us exhausted, surrounded by rejected designs. She looked at me for a long moment. "Because I grew up in a house that was beautiful and empty. All marble and no warmth. When I made my money, I promised myself I'd build places where people actually lived." She tapped my latest sketch. This is what living looks like." We launched Pierce and Lane Design Studio 6 months later. Our first project sold out before construction finished. The local paper called it a masterclass in coastal living. Architectural Digest ran a feature. Suddenly, everyone wanted a Pierce and Lane home. Year 1, we broke even. Year 2, we turned a profit. Year 3, we expanded. Year 4, we had a waiting list 6 months long. Isla, and I moved out of the studio apartment into a real house. Nothing extravagant, just something with space to breathe, a yard where we could plant things, windows that actually closed. We'd sit on the porch at night, watching the sunset, and she'd ask me if I ever missed Fairview. "Never," I'd say.
And I meant it.
But success has a way of making ghosts restless. 5 years after that letter disowning me, another envelope arrived. Different handwriting this time. Victor's. I almost didn't open it. Isla watched me stare at it over breakfast. "What do you think it says?" she asked. "Nothing good." I tore it open anyway. "Dad's not well. Heart condition. Doctors say it's serious. Thought you should know."
V. Short.
Clinical. No emotion, no apology, no invitation to come home. Just information delivered like a weather report. "Are you going to go?" Isla asked. "I don't know." I set the letter down. Part of me thinks he doesn't deserve my concern. He cut me out of his life. Why should I show up now? "Because you're not him," she said simply. "You're better than that." She was right. Damn it, she was right. 3 days later, I made the call. My mother answered, her voice smaller than I remembered. "Rowan, is that really you?" "Victor told me about Dad," I said. "How bad is it?" She hesitated. "He's stable. For now. The doctors say he needs to reduce stress, change his lifestyle, but you know your father. He won't listen." Her voice cracked. "He's gotten so stubborn in his old age." "In his old age?" I almost laughed. "Mom, he's been stubborn since I was born." Silence. Then, quietly, "I've missed you." 3 words. 5 years too late. But they hit harder than I expected. "I've missed you too," I admitted. "But missing someone and being treated right are 2 different things." "I know," she whispered. I know we hurt you. I know we were wrong about Isla, about your career, about everything. I just didn't know how to fix it. Your father's pride, my cowardice." She stopped. "I'm sorry, Rowan. I should have said that years ago." An apology from Marjorie Pierce. That might have been the most shocking thing I'd heard all year. "Is he asking to see me?" I asked. Another pause.
"No."
"But I am." I drove to Fairview the following week. Not in the old sedan anymore. In my $135,000 Porsche Taycan, electric blue, leather interior, the kind of car that announces arrival without saying a word.
"I didn't buy it for them."
I bought it the day Pierce and Lane signed our biggest contract, a 50-unit development that would put us in the 8-figure range. I bought it because I'd earned it. Because every rejection, every dismissal, every "you'll never make it" had been wrong. But as I pulled into Fairview, into my parents' neighborhood where nothing ever changed and everyone pretended to be happy, I won't lie, it felt good to arrive in that car. Mrs. Pemberton dropped her gardening shears. Mr. Hartford stared from his porch. Even the kids playing basketball stopped to watch. And when my parents came outside, when my father saw that Porsche gleaming in his driveway, when his eyes registered what it meant, that's when everything shifted. "You've done well for yourself," he said, his voice flat but his eyes calculating. "I did," I replied, getting out of the car. "Without a dime of your legacy." My mother went pale. My father's jaw tightened. And I realized something crucial. They needed me now more than I'd ever needed them. But what they needed me for? That was the question I couldn't answer yet. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and defeat. My father lay in the bed, smaller than I'd ever seen him, connected to machines that beeped like a countdown. His hair had gone white. His hands, those hands that used to sign documents that changed lives, trembled on the blanket. He was dying. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. You could see it in his eyes. "Rowan," he said when I walked in. No emotion. Just acknowledgement. "Dad." I pulled up a chair but didn't sit. Didn't want to get comfortable. My mother hovered by the window, wringing her hands. Victor leaned against the wall, watching everything with that lawyer's gaze, cataloging reactions for later use. "I'm glad you came," my father said. Each word seemed to cost him. "There are things we need to discuss." "Like what?" I asked. "Like how you disown me. Or how you missed my wedding. Or how you told me I'd never amount to anything." "Rowan," my mother pleaded. "No." I looked at her. "We're not doing this. We're not pretending the past didn't happen just because he's sick." My father actually smiled. Weak, but genuine. "You've gotten a spine.
"Good.
You'll need it for what comes next." "What comes next?" I repeated. Victor cleared his throat. "Dad's restructuring the estate. Given his health situation, the lawyers advised getting affairs in order." Something cold settled in my stomach. And, Victor continued, "we wanted you to know that despite everything, you're still family. Still a Pierce." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, now I'm family? Now that it's convenient?" 5 years of silence, and suddenly I get a hospital bedside reunion. I shook my head. "What do you really want?" My father's eyes sharpened. Even dying, he was calculating. "I want to know about your company. This Pierce and Lane operation." Victor showed me the articles. The portfolio. "You've done impressive work." There it was. Not pride. Interest. The way a shark circles something shiny. "My company is doing fine," I said carefully. "Better than fine," Victor corrected, pulling out his phone. 8-figure valuation. 50-unit development in progress. Architectural Digest features. "You've built something substantial." He looked up. "The question is, why build it alone?" "I'm not alone. I have Margot. I have my team." "But no family," my father said. "No legacy connection. No Pierce backing." And there it was. The pitch. The angle. "You want in," I said flatly. "We want to merge resources," Victor corrected smoothly. "Pierce Legal has capital, connections, political influence. You have design talent and market momentum. Together, We could dominate the luxury development market on the West Coast. I stared at him, then at my father, then at my mother, who wouldn't meet my eyes.
You're serious, I said.
You actually think I'd go into business with you after everything? It would be mutually beneficial, Victor pressed. Think about it, Rowan. With our backing, you could triple your operation. No more scraping for contracts, no more. I'm not scraping, I interrupted. I'm thriving. I built this without you. Why would I need you now? Because you're still my son, my father said, his voice cracking.
Because I made mistakes.
Because I want to make this right He stopped coughing. My mother rushed to his side. Victor looked uncomfortable. And I stood there, watching this man who'd spent my entire life telling me I wasn't enough suddenly pretend he cared. You don't want to make things right, I said quietly. You want to profit off my success. You want to tell people at your country club that Pierce and Lane has the family name in it for a reason. You want credit for something you tried to destroy. The machines beeped louder. My father's face flushed. That's not. It is. I cut him off. You didn't believe in me when I needed you. You mocked my dreams, dismissed my work, disowned me for marrying someone you deemed unworthy. And now that I've succeeded despite you, not because of you, despite you, you want in on it. Rowan, be reasonable, Victor started.
No.
I stepped back. I'm done being reasonable with people who've never been reasonable with me. I looked at my father. I came here because I thought maybe, finally, you'd see me, really see me. But you don't. You see an asset, a business opportunity, another thing to own. Son, my father tried, but I was already walking toward the door. I hope you get better, I said, my hand on the doorknob. I mean that. But I don't need your money, your connections, or your approval. I never did. I just wish I'd realized that sooner. I walked out, down the sterile hallway, past nurses and visitors, and the smell of sickness and regret, out into the parking lot where my Porsche sat gleaming in the afternoon sun. I sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking, breath coming fast. My phone buzzed. Isla. How'd it go? I typed back. About how you'd expect. Heading home. I'll make dinner. And pour wine. Love you. Love you too. I started the engine, that smooth electric hum, and pulled out of the hospital parking lot. In the rearview mirror, I saw Victor running after me, waving, shouting something I couldn't hear. I didn't stop. Because some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some families aren't worth saving. And some victories are won by walking away. But as I drove back toward Crestvale, toward Isla and the life we'd built, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over.
My father was dying.
And dying men don't give up that easily. He died on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after that hospital visit. Peacefully, according to my mother's text. In his sleep, surrounded by family. The family he'd chosen to acknowledge anyway. I was in a meeting when the message came through. Margot noticed me staring at my phone. Everything okay?
My father died, I said.
The words felt strange. Clinical. Like reporting weather. Oh, Rowan.
I'm so sorry.
She reached across the table. Do you need to? No, I interrupted. I need to finish this meeting. We can deal with family stuff later. But later came faster than expected. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. Graveside service, intimate gathering, all very proper and Pierce-like.
My mother called personally this time.
I know things were complicated, she said, her voice worn thin. But he was still your father. I hope you'll come. For me, if not for him. Isla found me on the porch that night, staring at nothing. Are you going? She asked, sitting beside me. I don't know what he wants me to say at his grave. Sorry you're dead. Wish you'd loved me. It feels hollow. Then don't say anything, she suggested. Just show up. Bear witness. Let yourself feel whatever you feel. What if I don't feel anything? She squeezed my hand. Then that's okay too. We drove to Fairview Saturday morning. Me in my suit, Isla in a simple black dress, both of us quiet. The cemetery was old, expensive, full of names that had ruled the town for generations. The Pierce plot sat on a hill overlooking everything. Even in death, they needed the best view. The crowd was small but influential. Lawyers, politicians, country club members, people whose names appeared on buildings. Victor stood near the casket in a perfectly tailored suit, playing the grieving son. Alara dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, leaning on her fiancé. What was his name? Something pretentious. My mother stood alone, small and fragile in her black veil. They saw me arrive. Heads turned. Whispers started. Rowan Pierce, the prodigal son, finally home. I took Isla's hand and walked to the graveside. Nobody stopped us. Nobody said anything. We just existed there, ghosts at our own family gathering. The service was short. A priest who clearly didn't know my father read generic verses about eternal rest and God's mercy. Victor gave a eulogy about legacy and honor that sounded like a TED Talk. Alara cried prettily. My mother stood silent. Nobody asked me to speak. I was grateful. When they lowered the casket, when the first shovel of dirt hit the wood, I felt nothing. Just empty. This man who'd shaped my entire life through his rejection, who'd pushed me away so hard I flew, was gone. And I felt nothing. Isla squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. Afterward, everyone gathered at the Pierce mansion for the reception. The same house I'd left years ago, the same rooms I'd grown up in feeling invisible. Now they were full of strangers eating catered food and talking about what a great man Leonard Pierce had been. I lasted 20 minutes. I need air, I told Isla. We slipped into my father's study, his sanctuary, the place where he dismissed my dreams and signed my disownment. It looked exactly the same. Same desk, same books, same leather chair. I sat in that chair. It felt wrong. Too big. Too cold. You okay? Isla asked. I thought I'd feel something, I admitted. Relief, anger, sadness, anything. But I just feel tired. She perched on the desk. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not fireworks, just peace. The door opened. Victor walked in, loosening his tie. Thought I'd find you here. He poured himself a scotch from the decanter, didn't offer me one. Quite the turnout. Dad would have been pleased. Would he? I asked. Victor shrugged. Who knows what pleased him? He was always so. He stopped, took a drink. Anyway, the will reading's scheduled for Monday. You should be there. Why? I asked. He made it clear I'm not in the will. Victor's expression shifted. Something flickered in his eyes. Just be there, Rowan. Trust me. I don't trust you, I said flatly. He smiled. Smart. But be there anyway. Monday arrived with gray skies and a sense of dread I couldn't explain. The lawyer's office was downtown Fairview. All dark wood and leather-bound books, the kind of place where fortunes were divided and families destroyed. We sat in a conference room, me, Isla, my mother, Victor, Alara, and her fiancé. The lawyer, Mr. Thornton, was ancient, probably older than the building itself. He opened a folder, adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat. The last will and testament of Leonard Marcus Pierce, he began. Written and executed on. Just get to it, Victor interrupted. Who gets what? Thornton frowned but continued. To my son, Victor Pierce, I leave the estate, the main house, grounds, and all associated properties. The law firm transfers to his sole ownership upon completion of transitional requirements. Victor nodded, unsurprised. Expected. To my daughter, Alara Pierce, I leave the lake house and its contents, plus a trust fund of $2 million. Alara gasped. Her fiancé squeezed her hand. And to my son, Rowan Pierce. Everyone turned to look at me. I kept my face neutral. I leave nothing. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. However, Thornton continued. There is an addendum. Written 3 weeks before Mr. Pierce's death. He pulled out another document. A letter. Addressed to Rowan. He slid it across the table. My name on the envelope, my father's handwriting, the last words he'd ever write to me. My hand shook as I reached for it. I didn't open the letter in that conference room. Couldn't. Not with everyone watching, waiting for my reaction like spectators at a car crash. Is that all? I asked Thornton. He nodded, looking almost sympathetic. That concludes the formal reading. My condolences to you all. Victor stood immediately.
Well,
that's settled then. He looked at me. You going to read that? Eventually, I said, pocketing the envelope. Probably just more of the same, Victor said, almost dismissively. Dad apologizing without actually apologizing. You know how he was. I didn't answer. Isla and I left the office, walked to my car in silence. I drove us to the beach. Not the one in Crestvale where we'd gotten engaged, but a quiet stretch of Fairview coast I used to escape to as a kid. We sat on a bench, overlooking the water. The envelope burned in my pocket. You don't have to read it, Isla said. You don't owe him anything. Not even your attention. I know. But my hands were already pulling it out, already tearing it open. The letter was handwritten, shaky, but legible. My father's words, maybe the truest ones he'd ever written to me.
Rowan?
If you're reading this, I'm gone.
Good.
I don't want to see your face when you read what I'm about to tell you. I was wrong. About everything. About your career, your wife, your life choices. I spent 30 years trying to mold you into something you weren't, and when you refused to break, I called it weakness. I was the weak one. Too proud to admit my son had courage I never possessed. I didn't come to your wedding because I was ashamed, not of you, but of myself. Ashamed I'd raised a son who had to leave me to become himself. Ashamed I'd valued reputation over love. Ashamed that when you succeeded without me, it proved everything I believed was a lie. I'm leaving you nothing in the will because you don't need anything from me. You never did. You built an empire from scratch. You married for love. You became a better man than I ever was. And I'm proud of you, even though I never said it when it mattered. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking that you don't let my mistakes poison your future. Don't become me, Rowan. Don't let pride cost you the people who matter. You were right that day in the hospital. I did see you as an asset. But before that, when you were 7 and built that crooked treehouse, I saw you as my son. The one who dreamed bigger than I ever could. I should have protected that. Instead, I killed it.
I'm sorry.
For all of it. For every wound I inflicted. Every dream I dismissed. Every moment I chose status over you. You were always enough. I just couldn't see it through my own inadequacy. Live well. Love that woman who sees your worth. Build beautiful things. And when you think of me, if you think of me at all, remember that my last thought was pride. Dad. The letter shook in my hands. Tears blurred the words. Isla read over my shoulder, her own tears falling. He knew, I whispered. He finally saw me. Yeah, Isla said softly. He did. I folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope. A goodbye, an apology, a release. We sat there for hours, watching the waves, not talking. Sometimes grief isn't loud. Sometimes it's just quiet acceptance that things could have been different, should have been different, but weren't. My phone buzzed. My mother.
Can we talk?
Please? I showed Isla. She nodded. I'll wait here. I found my mother at the mansion, alone in the garden. She looked older, smaller, like my father's death had taken some essential part of her too. Did you read it? She asked. Yes. He wrote it the night after you left the hospital, she said. Sat up all night, writing and rewriting. He wanted to get it right. She smiled sadly. Probably the only thing he ever wrote without lawyer language. Why didn't he just tell me? I asked. Why write it after he was gone? Because he was a coward, she said simply. He could face down judges and juries, but he couldn't face his own son and admit he was wrong.
She looked at me.
I'm sorry too, Rowan. For all of it. For choosing his side over yours. For missing your wedding. For letting pride matter more than love. Why now? I asked. Why apologize now that he's gone? Because I don't want to die with the same regrets. Her voice cracked. I already lost your father. I don't want to lose you too. Something in me softened. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close. Understanding, maybe. I'm not coming back to Fairview, I said. My life is in Crestvale. With Isla. With my work. I know, she said. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm just asking, can I visit? Can I meet her properly? Can I try to be the mother I should have been? I thought about it. About the letter. The regrets. The weight of carrying anger forever. Yeah, I said finally. You can try. She hugged me then, really hugged me, and cried into my shoulder like she'd been holding it in for years. Maybe she had. When I returned to the bench, Isla was exactly where I'd left her. How'd it go? She asked. Better than expected. I sat beside her. She wants to visit. Meet you properly. Isla smiled. I'd like that. We drove back to Crestvale that evening. Away from Fairview, away from the mansion and the memories and the grave on the hill. As the city lights faded in the rearview mirror, I felt something lift, a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there. My father left me nothing in his will. But in that letter, he gave me everything.
Permission to stop fighting.
Permission to be proud of who I'd become. Permission to let go. The Porsche hummed beneath us, carrying us home. But one question lingered. What happened to Victor's weird insistence that I attend the reading? Something wasn't adding up. 3 months after the funeral, I discovered Victor's final betrayal through a lawsuit delivered to my office. He was suing me for unauthorized use of the Pierce name. The document accused me of exploiting the family legacy I'd supposedly abandoned when I was disowned. Absurd, vindictive, and pure Victor. I called him furious. Got the paperwork, he asked smugly. What the hell are you doing?
Business, he said.
Dad left me the estate, the firm, the name. You walked away, remember? So it's not yours anymore. You're insane. This is leverage, he said calmly. Pierce and Lane's worth 8 figures now. You settle, give me 30% equity, or I'll bury you in court. It was extortion, and he knew it. Our lawyer confirmed the nightmare. We'd probably win, but Victor could drag the case out for years, bleed us dry, and destroy our reputation with clients. That night, I sat on the porch, staring at the ocean until Isla joined me. I should just give him what he wants, I muttered. Is that what you want?
No.
But what choice do I have? What if you didn't need the Pierce name at all? She said softly. Rebrand. Build something that has nothing to do with them. The thought hit me hard. Losing the Pierce name meant losing the last tie to my family, but maybe it was also the key to real freedom. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with Margot. What if we rebranded? New name, fresh start. She blinked. You're serious. Dead serious. Let him keep the name. I'll build something better. She smiled. How about Coastal Legacy Design? I like it. Let's do it. For the next month, we rebuilt everything: logo, website, contracts, identity. We told every client the truth. Not a single one cared. They weren't hiring the Pierce name. They were hiring us. I sent Victor a short, final letter. I'm changing the company name to Coastal Legacy Design. You can have the Pierce name. I don't need it anymore. Thanks for giving me the chance to prove you wrong again.
Rowan.
The lawsuit disappeared within a week. 6 months later, Coastal Legacy Design landed its biggest project yet, a 100-unit sustainable community that made national news. Our team doubled, our valuation soared, and for the first time, I felt completely untethered. Isla and I built our dream home by the sea, bright, open, full of love, designed with everything I'd learned about living, not performing. My mother visited twice. We talked. She met Isla. She cried. She apologized. It wasn't perfect, but it was something, a fragile beginning. Victor never called again. I didn't care, because by then I understood. My worth never came from their approval. It came from what I built, who I loved, and how I refused to stay buried under their expectations. One morning, as Isla and I watched the sunrise over the ocean, she asked, "Do you ever regret it? Leaving Fairview? Losing your family?"
I didn't lose them, I said.
I found myself. She smiled. That's very philosophical for 7 a.m. I laughed. They spent my whole life telling me I wasn't enough. Turns out I was always more than enough. I just had to stop asking for their permission to believe it. My phone buzzed. A message from Margot. New client inquiry. Big one. They specifically asked for you. I showed Isla. She grinned. Empire building on a Sunday? Empire building every day, I said. As the sun climbed higher, I thought of Victor sitting in that mansion full of unearned wealth, my mother tending her garden of regrets, and me here, free, fulfilled, building a life I chose. No borrowed name, no inherited chains, just love, purpose, and self-respect. My father had written in his final letter that I'd always been enough. He was right. I only wish I'd realized it sooner. Better late than never. Better free than sorry. Better your own man than someone else's disappointment. That's the only inheritance worth keeping.
So, what about you?
Have you ever had to choose between family approval and your own dreams? Have you ever proved wrong the ones who doubted you? Share your story below. It might give someone else the courage to break free. And if this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. More powerful stories are coming. Stories that remind you your worth isn't defined by who believes in you, but by what you build when they say you can't. Thanks for being part of this family. Remember, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's living so well their judgment no longer matters. See you in the next story.